Hi everyone, this is Catalin, and I just want to make a quick introduction because our today's guest is Beniamin Mincu, who's a tech entrepreneur, born and raised in Romania. He's particularly focused on blockchain technology and artificial intelligence, and the founder and CEO of Elrond, where he spends most of his time. Also, in the past, he worked at NEM as part of their core founding team, which is a blockchain technology that delivers a world-class platform for management of almost any kind of asset. Elrond is, in my opinion, basically Bitcoin on steroids, because instead of having the capacity to do 7 transactions a second, Elrond's infrastructure can process a 10, 15 and up number of transactions, which is quite extraordinary. So they've been able to innovate and find an incredible way to actually get this technology to the masses. They've also launched an app called Mayar, who's basically a user interface, a cash app, but on blockchain. So there's a lot of great benefits to that. In this conversation, what we talked about is the impact of having access to basic financial infrastructure. As a lot of people know, there's a 1.7 billion people that do not have access to any financial infrastructure, basic instruments whatsoever. So we talked about the impact of that in actual stories and examples and how Elrond is seeking to fix that. We also talked about the premise of Elrond and overall the premise of decentralized finance and how Elrond is different, what is Mayar, and everything else. And we also talked about a little bit about Beniamin and how he and his co-founders built the company, what makes a great company tick, and how do you go about setting such a bold vision and actually going and executing on it. So quite fascinating. Very much enjoyed our chat, and I hope you will too. Share this with a friend that you think might benefit from this interview, and make sure to follow Beniamin on Twitter or go to their website elrond.com and learn more and see where they're going in their progress. Thank you so much. Hi everyone. So we have Beniamin with us. Beniamin, thanks so much for joining us for today's interview. Really happy to have you on and excited for our conversation.
Hello there. Really great to be here, and happy to have this conversation.
So Beniamin, as we were talking right before I pressed record, I was saying that you guys have such a deep, big, and ambitious and inspiring mission. And before we get into Elrond and blockchain and what you guys do and the progress and the impact in the world, and there's a lot of that we're going to do in this conversation, I'm really curious to hear from you because I'm getting this sense, it's very much intuitive at this point. I would like to get your thoughts on it, that there's some sort of unification that happens, that there's a lot of people working on really facilitating the evolution of mankind. They say it in different words, like progress, survival of the species. Obviously, Elon Musk is working on similar things, but there's a lot of people that are not so well known that are working on the similar things in academia and in other companies. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this? Because this has never been the case. Like, people really did not have a worry about saving the planet until like maybe 20, 30 years ago or something. Just curious, like, what has brought you to think and dream for yourself at such a big level, and what do you see in the world? Because I'm sure you're in your connection with a lot of great people too that maybe are on the same mission as you.
Sure. I would say that we're at this very point where humanity has never been in a better position to understand the problems that it faces, and then to maybe build a better world. So this is what we've been probably seeing in all these fields, where people, after they start to solve the immediate problems that they have, start to have the necessary food they need on the table, they start thinking about the deeper problems. And maybe it's this idea that where we've reached this point from which you can see things in a different way, both if you look at history and if you look to the future. And maybe there's a kind of point where if you can think in terms of evolution, At that point, it seems that whatever problem still remains has to be particularly important. And whenever people apply this type of framework, they either discover some very interesting and deep problems, or discover some interesting ways in which the future can be improved. So it's more like whoever tries to escape this narrow discussion of the immediate possibilities of immediate problems that we have is immediately reaching this point where you cannot sort of escape this discussion. And I believe that during the next period, we'll probably see everyone discuss about this important problems that if we do not face or approach them in the right way, will probably not be here for a long time. Then on the other hand, if we approach them in the right way, we can build a world that is unlike anything we've had up until this point.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and it very much fills within the lines of what biology thinks. Like if you think about humanity as an organism and as adapting to an environment, if you don't adapt to the environment, the definition of that is like you go extinct. So that's not that pleasant. And we've seen a lot of that. Well, you can have a big argument about us amplifying that effect on other, let's say, living beings in the world and things like that. So that's very interesting. And when I think about what you said, Beniamin, my first thought is there's a lot of, most people don't think about what you're working on. Like they don't even think about it ever. And I think my best guesstimate for why would that be, and I'm curious on your thoughts, is that there's a lot of problems that are visible, and a lot of things, if they're working, they're invisible to people. And especially for most of the people listening to this, they're by nature going to have access to the internet. They're going to have, like, they're going to be in a Western society most likely. So the problem that you are maybe showcasing is not visible. Maybe it is visible now with like the whole Robinhood and GameStop activity, like the whole things are becoming more and more obvious to people. But I'm curious, in the big problems that you see in the world, how big is the financial system as a problem, and where does that fit in the whole infrastructure? Because it feels to me like an underlying layer that if it works, people don't realize it exists, and if it doesn't, maybe not. If you're in Africa, you probably don't even know what the blockchain is. So there's all this stuff. I'm curious what are your thoughts on that, if that makes sense.
I would say that we currently have two very, very important problems within the economic or financial system. And these problems have to do with, on the one hand, a systemic problem with respect to the maybe technology that we are using, so that we are basically using currently deprecated 40-year-old technology that imposes some constraints, whether it's the speed at which we can transfer value, the cost that we incur, or the inefficiencies that mount up rapidly. This is one of the really huge problems because it affects every one of us. So we lose time whenever we make even a simple money transfer. You have to wait overnight, or you have to still wait over weekends. And this is something that should not be the case in the 21st century, especially when we have the internet and so forth. And then there's a second problem that ties up into this. And maybe this is even more pressing because there are maybe more than 1.7 billion people that still don't have basic infrastructure access, any kind of infrastructure, financial infrastructure access. So tying both of these problems together, I would say that although most people still have not thought about this, this could be the one thing that could potentially increase the entire global economy by 1 or 2 orders of magnitude. just because we could immediately transition to a better technology, underlying infrastructure for the financial system. And then secondly, we could save many lives by improving accessibility to this type of infrastructure. So by and large, although I would say there are very few problems that you could put out there that have a huge effect on the future of humanity, I think this is one of the problems that would in fact improve our chances with respect to almost any other technology that we want to build, just because we could capture the value more rapidly, or create it more rapidly, and then we could also exchange it and spread it so that the 1.7 billion people that still don't have any type of access could have this. And in that case, I want to stress the fact that it's actually people dying, right? That there are many people that are still below the poverty level. Things have improved considerably over the last 50 years and 100 years, but we still have a good number there. And if we can do something to improve so many lives at once, I would say that there are very few technologies that have this kind of potential impact. And this is why we care a lot about this type of infrastructure.
So could you maybe showcase like a story or of an example? Because when you say people are dying, it's not like when I think about the financial system, it's not the first thing I think about is like people dying, right? When I think about like selling weapons, okay, that's the first thing I think about. When I think about a financial system, that's not the first thing that comes to mind. So can you walk us through like a simple example? Let's say I'm unbanked, I'm in Africa, and scenario one is I have what it is you do with Elrond, and I have access to financial, like if I have nothing, everything I have is like an infinite order of magnitude better. So can you showcase a bit of a story between those two scenarios?
Sure. So the idea is this: the poverty line is basically defined such that people from around the world, wherever they are, either have or don't have enough resources to just survive a day or survive the next period. And what's interesting is that throughout the last 100 years, of course, from maybe 80% or 70% of people living below the poverty line, we've improved to a point where it's now maybe below 10% or around 10% of people from the entire world that have this type of problem. And then what we know that has worked very significantly is that whenever I have access to basic infrastructure, whether it's just money or ability to exchange money, ownership and ability to, let's say, defend this type of thing that I own, I immediately will have or develop an instinct to build some more things, to gather some more food, maybe exchange it with some other people and so forth. This is how you initially started to have villages, and then villages started to organize into cities and so forth. So coming back to this, we still have places in the world where there are basically no infrastructure elements that allow you to maybe store any type of value. So you don't have money. Not having money, you cannot share things within your community. Not being able to share things, you need to strive for every day just to find food, just to fight for your life. And when you think about building a family like that, and building a community like that, and extending that community, you immediately run into some very strange problems, because you have a lack of things that we take for granted in most parts of the world. So this is why some people maybe, since they are working each day, like strive for that particular day and cannot add some more value or save some more value for the next day. There are days where they have food and days where they don't have food. And since they cannot store stuff, sometimes they die, and this is very, very sad. Just to hear that this is the case in some places of the world. And then coming back to our point, it's the discussion is not necessarily immediately about the blockchain technology, but providing this type of basic infrastructure, providing the basics so that people can start saving something, start adding some value, start providing to their families. And whether it's a simple connection to the internet, a simple money wallet, and some other things along those lines, I would say it would go a long way to improve the societies there.
Yeah, awesome. So if I understand correctly, the missing link is this financial infrastructure, because internet exists, and now with Starlink and all these other efforts like Facebook does, and all these other people that are basically offering widespread internet access in remote places for relatively affordable prices in most cases, but that's another aspect. Then we have phones, which people can afford, and there's a lot of people that have phones in those places, I think, and that's accessible. And the missing link is this type of infrastructure that will allow them to like start storing value and communicate with each other and send value to each other. Okay.
It's surprising. Just imagine a day where you start the day and then cannot use this money element. I'm not even referring to any kind of more sophisticated instruments, but it's surprising how difficult life would be with something as basic as this. And then the corollary to that is that as we've seen with these countries, many of them just leapfrogged the infrastructure technology to a point where they did not have landline phones, but then they got smartphones, because smartphones were not this type of things that you just bought, but they would generate a lot of value for you because you can communicate, you can exchange things and so forth. And it seems that money and more sophisticated financial infrastructure is just an extension, but one that is very, very necessary in that type of environment.
Yeah. And I think the only other person I've heard talk about this deeply is, well, in Yuval Harari book Sapiens, he talks about how people went, like a big shift was obviously the agricultural revolution, when people went from spending 9 hours a day to just sustain themselves to 2 hours a day to sustain themselves. And even though there was some problems with people being in the same place and like all this stuff, it was much better because now you have 7 hours and you could do stuff with 7 hours. You can invent tools, you can innovate, you can, I don't know, make kids, something else. You could do stuff. So as I'm understanding, if I wouldn't create my clothes, and if I would go hunting today, and if I would hunt something, I will eat like a quarter of it because I can't eat the whole thing. I can't sell the other part and have like $10 for it and then buy stuff in the future. So I'll continuously have to work to just sustain myself. Am I getting it?
Exactly. Okay. This is precisely the situation where you basically live for only one day, and then next day you start from scratch. And imagine how sad this type of situation is, where you have to reset every single day. And some days it can actually become very painful, where you just don't find the animal to hunt, or you don't find work, right? Maybe you're not in the jungle and so forth, but you still strive to find the basic elements.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. So within that context, now, where does what you guys do come in? And specifically, I stalked you on Twitter, and I have like a bunch of your tweets and stuff like that. So it seems to be like it's a very, very specific problem criteria to what you guys are doing. Can you elaborate on what is the problem, and how does Elrond and what you guys do come and offer let's say a place for which other seeds can grow? Because that's kind of how I see you guys. Is not that you're trying to grow the highest and biggest tree, is you're saying like, hey, we're going to build this, we're going to have 10 acres of land, and you guys can plant stuff and seeds, and it will actually grow in a very sustainable way, instead of you trying to be in any case, so walk me through that argument.
So the basic goal of what we're trying to achieve at Elrond is that on the one hand, we're trying to build this high bandwidth, low latency financial system that is transparent, it's open, and then opens up a new layer for society, for humanity. And then secondly, we're trying to make this new layer accessible to anyone, anywhere. And specifically how we're trying to do each of these elements is at first, the high bandwidth, low latency financial system refers to what we said and discussed before, namely the systemic economic problem that we have where technology is deprecated, inefficient, it could be significantly improved. And then there's maybe another nuance to this. Not only that it can be improved from an efficiency standpoint, but when you add transparency to it, some people start behaving very differently, right? And they cannot behave the way they would otherwise. And so transparency is this superpower for good, which reorganizes the behavior of the players inside the game. And this is what we're doing with the Elrond network. The blockchain network that we've built is essentially 1000x improvement compared to Bitcoin or Ethereum in terms of throughput, execution speed, and transaction cost. But this is really a kind of natural, let's say, Internet of Money layer that has been missing. So we have software, we have the internet, but then for some reason, money is not yet abstracted correctly in the digital space. And it is this type of blockchain technology that finally offers us the payment rails so that we can have a different kind of financial system. And then maybe to the second point, it's not enough to have the maybe highest performance infrastructure because maybe only a handful of people will understand it, interact with it, and so forth. You also want a very simple and intuitive application that abstracts any kind of complexity and allows anyone in the world to start playing with this type of technology, using its benefits and so forth. So this is what we're doing with Maiar. It's just been launched barely 2 weeks ago. And yeah, there's an entire discussion there, but there are two elements that I think play out or tie specifically to the most pressing economic problems that we have.
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, because a lot of people, so what are the criteria? There's one, how many transactions you can do. What are the cost of those transactions if this is decentralized and if it is accessible to everyone? Are those the criteria out of which, like the performance criteria?
Performance criteria is bandwidth. So what type of bandwidth do you have? Can you process 7 transactions per second? Can you process 15 or 15,000? If you can process 15,000 compared to 7, obviously you're playing a different game. If you can up that game even further, then it's of course great. Then you have obviously inexpensiveness. How cost effective is this entire process? Does it enable very cheap transactions for everyone? This is clear and good. Then you have latency. So what's the speed that I can do this transaction at? And again, this is very important. Then you have security. Of course, you've built an entire network, but how secure is it? Can it stand the attacks that will come over it? Is it robust enough, and so forth? And then, yeah, I would say decentralization is, of course, this other element that makes it even more valuable, because it means you have built the technology, it works really fast, it's inexpensive, it's secure, but now, is it decentralized or is it going to break as all the other technologies we've seen in the past, where at some point sufficiently large technology creates all sorts of problems, where you don't want to innovate anymore. You just control, rent stuff, and yeah, there's no incentive to move forward.
Right. So security, so bandwidth, cost, latency, security, decentralization, which I'm feeling is similar to like the open source software movement, maybe. And then the effect of that is access, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as an effect of all
Exactly.
of that.
Exactly. So you have this entire network, but this can be the best network in the world if you don't have very easy access. Then you basically will still have 10 people playing with it. It might be the most secure, it might be the most high performance, but access is such a, it seems like a simple problem, but it's such a complex problem that it's a kind of business in itself. You need to invest as many resources in this as you did in the entire network.
Is that kind of like the UX problem, like the Steve Jobs Xerox Spark situation? Like Xerox has created basically has, because I know the story exactly. I read it in his book. Like they created the technology, and Steve Jobs got them to show it to them, and then they just stole it. Well, not fully, because everybody's arguing about it, but it seems like they stole a big part of it, and then they added a big, like they solved the friction that was stopping people from consuming those products. Is that what you mean by access?
Yes, it's not enough to have the best technology if you cannot bring it to market and enable people to really use it. And it's surprising how large this problem actually is, and how much value you can bring to the market if this is solved correctly.
And this is what you guys, so you guys have a lot of partners, you have a lot of people developing on the Elrond network, and what you guys have done is you've taken one of the use cases, which is Myar, and that's the project you just launched, correct? But there's a lot of people building stuff on your infrastructure, but that's one of the things you have built. So you built both the infrastructure and the use case on top of it.
Yeah, the idea is this. The technology is obviously open source. There are a lot of people that are using it, contributing, and so forth. This is really great, and it's going to continue to be like that. But some things are simply too important to be left to chance. So this is why we've put a lot of effort into thinking what could actually accelerate this entire transition, improve the accessibility to the network, and give us a space to push things within our own rhythm. Because otherwise we could expect something like this maybe to happen in 5 years or in how many years. But we've taken this and said, maybe even better, it's to going back to the Apple model. It's to have both the infrastructure and the software. And ship it directly to the user in a seamless way, especially in a space where everything is super complicated, super complex, and users basically die in the process.
Yeah. So that sounds cool. And my next question is, okay, now I think Bitcoin is like 7 transactions, something like that. And you guys are like 10,000. And great, right? So that's like, I don't even know how many orders of magnitude. It's like something unbelievable. And I've read in your white paper, this is because, I quote, and I do not know what this means, is adaptive state sharding, correct? Like, I'm just trying to imagine, can you maybe potentially explain in a simple way, if I'm running at 5 miles per hour, and I know Bitcoin is 10 years old and the whole 9 yards, and they started like this whole movement. But if I'm running at 5 miles per hour, how in the world can you run at 1,000 miles per hour? Like how can you do that jump? Are you guys like geniuses over there? Or is there some sort of like, how do you, because if I have a deck of cards, even if I just shuffle that deck of cards 10 times more effective, I won't be 200 times a better poker player than you. So I'm trying to see where is that order of efficiency coming from, because you have the same ingredients as everybody else. Just trying to conceptualize that. Okay, great.
Sure.
Yeah, what do you think?
So the idea is this. I would start by saying that we've gathered a very, very talented team at Elrond. So these are researchers, engineers, PhDs in computer science, mathematics, with Olympiads in mathematics and so forth. So we've literally started by saying, let's gather a team with which we can build rockets, and then almost any other problem will seem very solvable as an effect. But moving beyond that, the idea is this. I would say that Bitcoin deserves a lot of credit for the huge leap forward, as Satoshi brought it forward. So does Ethereum, which again brought the leap forward. But maybe the lesson here is that technology will never stop to improve, right? You don't need this type of religiosity with respect to technology, because we know technology will improve. And so we've had Bitcoin, it's 7 transactions per second. The idea with the Bitcoin infrastructure is that you essentially have a network where the entire network processes the entire workload at the same time in a serialized manner. So that if you have one computer or 1,000 computers, it doesn't help in any way. You have all the 1,000 computers processing the same workload. Now in Elrond, we've researched things for a long time and came with 2 important breakthroughs. One of them was this idea of adaptive state sharding. This idea simply means that you take a network, and instead of processing everything within each computer or each machine at the same time, you say, let's divide the network into smaller networks and parallelize transaction processing, so that this network processes 1 quarter, this 1 quarter, this 1 quarter, and added and put together, you're basically playing a different game. So this is sharding. Now the adaptivity part of the sharding model is very elegant, because it means that based on the demand of the network, we can increase the throughput of the network significantly. So we have 15,000 transactions per second with 3 shards plus a meta chain, it's what it's called, but we can increase to 10 shards if it's really needed and go beyond 100,000 transactions. But this is not the problem of, let's say, possibility of what we can do, but at first you want to see the demand, want to provide the infrastructure, and as demand comes in, you can improve the network. And this is the elegance of Elrond. Maybe the second point to that, where Elrond is differentiated from Bitcoin, is that we've transitioned from this proof of work consensus algorithm, which is basically very energy intensive and sort of a computational waste problem over time. And we've moved to secure proof of stake, which is essentially very efficient in terms of energy resources consumed, very fast compared to Bitcoin, and very secure, being based on random sampling of the consensus group every round. So what this means is essentially you have 400 nodes group within the network or within one shard, and from this 400 nodes you have 61 nodes that are elected every 6 seconds randomly from the entire group, and you never know who will be elected because it's random mathematical formulation. And then after the 6 seconds, you every other 6 seconds have a new group, so that you can preserve security and still run the network in a very robust way.
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, I'm trying to summarize. Let me know if I'm at least in the right direction. So if I have 1,000 people working in my kitchen, instead of like giving somebody a job that takes them an hour, I'll basically take the job and just give it, like spread to all the 1,000 people at the same time, like 0.01% of the job to each. Like each person works 30 seconds, so they'll finish the job in like a second, instead of like taking an hour.
The first part
at least.
Yeah. This is the idea. You divide and conquer, because you work on divided nature, just as in an economy. you basically can be much more efficient. Of course, there are other benefits. So we use a different kind of cryptography, more advanced algorithms. Every time you make an invention, you can improve it significantly afterwards. So there are several types of improvements there, but this type of breakthrough changes the game completely.
Awesome. That makes sense. So now to talk about Maiar and use cases for a second. So you guys are launching this, which is you guys have launched Maiar, which is something like Revolut or the Cash App for the United States, or I think Waymo. What was the name? What's the name of the app? Venmo. There you go, Venmo. So it has that use case, but you guys are going to build a lot of use cases within the same app, if I'm correct. So what was the plan for that? Like, where are you guys going with this? Because I've seen your like initial numbers are just absolutely, I mean, rocket great, I think, in my opinion. I don't know. So that's I'm not sure what's your opinion on the numbers, but it seems there's a lot of interest into that, obviously. So where are you guys going with that? What's kind of the plan to go?
Sure. So the idea with Maiar is to offer maybe the simplest crypto wallet out there, through which you can immediately start interacting with crypto, start experimenting, discovering the different things that exist in the space, but do it in a very, let's say, seamless way, as opposed to a complex way as you had it in the blockchain space. So you have a few really cool things. You have the idea of hero tags, which are kind of like usernames. You are used to that. Just as you would send an email, you send some money to a hero tag wherever they are in the world. At first, of course, you can do it with crypto, but very soon you'll be able to have stable coins in there, digital stable coins. You just send as easy as that. Then you have a very cool progressive security, which means that at first you can explore these things without having to go through a very detailed security process, as it is normally in the blockchain space. You have some, let's say, almost fundamental right built in the sense that it's a non-custodial wallet. No one controls your money. Only you have access to it, which is a kind of important breakthrough brought by the blockchain. So it's like a right that you have encoded in the code. You cannot, no one can take it away from you because they don't even have access to it. And then maybe moving forward, the idea is that once you can do payments, normal payments with friends, with contacts, and have a kind of gamification layer on top, since you have an interaction with this very high performance blockchain, you can essentially build a lending element in the application and just launch it there. You can build a swap or exchange application in the application, and then you can launch even cooler things like NFTs and so forth in this application. So it's like what you can offer is unlimited because of the deep connection with the blockchain element. But at first, you of course want things to be very simple as possible, and then you just want to build on that with the users.
Awesome. So when one question that came, I was talking with a friend who's deep in the crypto space, and he asked me this question. I thought it's interesting to bring it up, and now I'd love to hear about some other use cases, because I've seen your thread with Elon Musk and like the use cases of your infrastructure on top of what he's doing, and I think that's really cool. And I'll be curious to hear about that. But first, I'll be curious if you would be able to like snap your finger and have, for simplicity's sake, Romania run on eGold and run your infrastructure. What would be some implications of that? Like, how would that look like? What would be some of the impacts that maybe we can see of that type of, I would say, tectonic change, but maybe not so much, right? So, yeah, I'm curious on your thoughts on that.
So a few things. This, although this thought experiment might sound almost sci-fi now. I do think that there are scenarios where this can become at least partially a reality. And then the immediate implications would be that first, you can transfer value to anyone almost instantly at a trivial cost. So just as you send an email or a text message, you would never worry about whom you send money to and what the cost is, because it's the internet. It should be like that. Then, of course, you'll have lending elements. So you could lend money or borrow money very easily in an automated way. This is just the basic stuff. And then moving on top of that, there are new value creation tools here that would not be possible without blockchains. And what we see currently with the NFTs is this idea that you want to move art in the digital space, where you have unique digital objects being able to be exchanged globally really fast with sums of money that might surprise you sometimes. But it's just the start. So we're at this very point discovering that there's a much larger solution space here to create new things. And beside that, I think the economic growth that we would see from this new infrastructure would influence things in many surprising ways, because it's always that when you adopt a really efficient technology, the society around you improves in many ways that you did not think possible. So if there's well-being and you have enough money to eat and so forth, you start devoting some time to maybe more intense intellectual activities. Maybe you want to solve some of the problems that are near you. Maybe you have some more creative solutions and have access to capital. And all of this sort of ties together, where you either have a working economy or not. And I think with an infrastructure like Elrond, we could see something very powerful happening in the speed and then scale at which innovation would come to life, and the lives of people would improve.
Yeah. And is that just curious, from my own curiosity, if that choice would be happening, like, is there like hundreds of stakeholders involved in a choice like this? Or is there like because if there's like, well, I'm thinking in terms of like war analogy, if there's like one person that can make this choice, then that wouldn't be as complicated, or a couple. But if there's like a Senate, 12 months, whatever, like 300 people, like, I'm curious, what's kind of the complexity on this type of change to be done in any democratic country, I would say, because that would make it too complicated. Yeah.
I think it's precisely because it's a democratic country that usually it's very complex, because the idea of democracy has generally been that you should have a very hard time to break things, even if you have one crazy guy. Since there are many people, you basically have to go through many swoops there. But even so, I think this is where blockchain and cryptocurrencies are especially powerful, because they can incentivize people to make some decisions at scale in a way that you could not do before. So whereas in a normal scenario, you would have to discuss with 10 people or 100 people and so forth, you could see a scenario where if Elrond continues to grow and we see a lot of startups being built, and maybe Romanians starting to engage with this new wave of innovation, which we're seeing actually, but there could be a scenario where Elrond creates the most millionaires in any company in the history of Romania. And then all you need to do is basically say, let's do this or that. And there are enough people with sufficient resources, with a will there to basically change whatever is needed. So you either need to play this game where you have one person and then you need to direct the entire attention, or if you have this really elegant way of incentivizing everyone to do it for their own interests, not for Elrond's interest. There's nothing more powerful than that. So this is what we are actually seeing in Romania right now, and maybe in other countries as well, that people discover things for their own benefit, for their own interest, and then they start asking, but why not? Why don't we do it like this? Why don't we take it one step further? And this is a kind of silent but really huge improvement that is happening in the background.
Yeah, that's cool. That is cool because there is a big, I think, unreasonable expectation of people to do things outside of their own self-interest. And maybe it's not a material self-interest, but it's always self-interest. And I mean, that's just the way it works. So that's very interesting. One thought I have, and I'll maybe mention to you something afterwards that I think might be beneficial, but wouldn't be productive to the conversation right now, is I'll be curious if you could comment on the whole GameStop, AMC, Robinhood. I don't want you to mention anything like whatever, because I get that, but just how would that ever happen if we would have a system like what you're describing? And just a comment. I'll be curious on your thoughts on that, because I'm sure you've been asked a lot about that, or you thought about it.
Maybe I think the fundamental idea here is that people are maybe had enough of a rigged system where they feel that they can simply not do anything productive, sort of goes against them. And you can feel this globally during the last few days and last few weeks and so forth. It has maybe reached a tipping point. And what we've said is that the idea is not to patch a broken zero-sum game, but rather to create a new non-zero sum or positive sum game that gives everyone a chance, and it's a chance to really create something that has not been done. There are obviously 1,000 things that you could comment on. So the system is broken on so many levels, but we always try to maybe go one step further and say, if you have transparency, if you have a high bandwidth infrastructure, if you have accessibility, then the market usually works itself out, and you don't need a lot of regulation to basically crowd the space and kill the innovation. Rather, you still need some rules, of course, but you want the systems in place. And with this new type of system, you don't need to focus on just stealing from the other people. It's not a zero-sum game. It's about you have the tools now. Focus on creating something useful. If you convince enough people to start using it, then there's value for everyone.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's very cool. I think this whole interview is just like me saying that all the time. So one thought from biology is when you have a pie, like in a biological system, there's two approaches you can have. One of them is to try to fight the agents in the pie and to make them like give up their part of the pie and then convince them that there's a bigger pie somewhere and whatever. And that's one way. The other approach is basically have something so much bigger and obviously as a better choice, which usually happens, behavioral change usually happens in a one order of magnitude efficiency. If you guys are proposing 2 orders of magnitude, that should be like in the category of no-brainer type thing. So the second approach is basically build something so much better that it basically eats the smaller thing. And there's no competition there. There really is no competition. So is that within the lines of what you described?
Yeah, actually, this is precisely what I described. The first game is zero sum. So you always have the same parts. You just fight among the participants to see who divides what. But then the other game is non-zero sum or positive sum, where you can basically start from nothing, but then you can create a pie that is so large that the other pie looks looks as something insignificant in comparison. And this is what software has brought to us. This is what the internet has brought to us. And I think even with blockchain technology, this is the entire idea, not to continue to patch a broken system, but to have a new system that gives the chances to everyone, and then you can really focus on being productive and not fighting with the other participants.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you think this is valid for the other big complex problems like health, education, and like you think is because we have like insurance and like, wow, it's like I wouldn't say, I wouldn't be able to compare them because I don't fully understand both, but I would say it's the same degree of just pain in every parts of your body. So I'm curious, you see like similar approach would work for those other, let's say, big fundamental meta problems like health, education, and all these other fields?
What I would say is whenever you're trying to reason, understand these problems and maybe reason from first principles, you can come up with solutions that are very non-obvious as long as you just keep reasoning based on analogy. Because analogies, basically, you always look in the past and say, have we seen that? Have we understood something like this? Did we encounter it? But and this might be useful until some point, but then this is not useful at all for discovering new things or improving things dramatically better. And this is why the scientific method does not go and build on analogies, but rather you take one assumption, build on it, discover, try to validate some hypothesis, and you always try to deconstruct the problems, see what's the lowest common denominator, and then try to maybe solve that point, which then is the same as we see right now. You can discuss even about the financial sector in many ways, but most of the things that you see are just effects of this very fundamental thing. So the question is, can you basically get to the fundamental thing? If you can, then your entire problem looks very, very different, and then the solution, of course, as well.
Yeah. So if you would be able, because I look at companies as problem-solving machines, and I think what you said is one of the, let's say, principles, implicit or explicit, to what makes your group of people be a good problem-solving machine as it pertains to your goals and your mission. I'm curious if you would give 3 things that come to mind that have been in your particular context successful to drive this amount of progress in this small amount of time. Because it seems to me from an outside view, and I could never know, that you guys are very your velocity of improvement is very, very fast. Because I've looked a bit of your history from my just limited understanding. So curious on what would you say are a couple of things that have allowed you as a group of people to make this amount of progress in this amount of time? Because a lot of people are working on the problem, but it seems that there's only a few that have been reasonably successful in a way that's actually applicable and has a go-to market. Like you guys have taken an integrative way and actually provided a solution to the market. Curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would say, of course, there are many things that contribute. You always have a hard time in saying what has actually caused different things. But there are, of course, a few things like we have a very, very strong team of extremely and exceptionally smart people. But beyond that, what I think makes Elrond very uncommon, even for the startup space, is that this group of people are super helpful. So it's you're surprised how well these people work together and how focused they are to actually making progress and not just engaging in debates for the debate's sake. And this idea of being super helpful is something that we're focusing on then maybe it's an insane amount of effort. So we always have this discussion that there are a lot of types of jobs, a lot of types of people, but at Elrond, it's like the SWAT force. So it's very intense, very difficult. You have to solve very complex problems, but you also have to do it in a way where you sort of need to work smart, long, smart, and hard. And at Elrond, you cannot choose 2 out of 3. So there's absolutely no way with the complexity that we have where you can say, no, I'm just smart enough. I can focus on this 2 hours a day or 4 hours or 8 hours. Sometimes we leave the office the second day at 6 a.m. in the morning. And when you can do that and still wake up happy because you believe in what you're building and have the energy to go the next day and so forth, it's very useful. So again, super helpful people, very smart and talented people, but then a great amount of effort to the extent where if you'd know how much, you'd be surprised that people are still kicking and moving. Maybe this idea that the idea is that everything we're doing at the fundamental level as humans is we're entropy reversal agents. So at the most fundamental level, what the universe is just an entropy machine. Over time, whatever you put in, you get entropy, more entropy. And there have been 3.7 billion years to sort of create this. There's a lot of discussion about entropy, but the idea is that at every level, whether it's personal level, organizational level, state level, what breaks is entropy. It's not a particular person or something that you immediately see. It's this notion that something that is mostly invisible immediately is the thing that's causing the friction, the problems. So understanding this, we're trying to fight entropy at every level. When we see it, you want to improve things because there are some problems here, and wherever you see it, you want to do this. To the extent that you can do this with a team, it becomes like a superpower.
Absolutely. And just one little note on that, and I'll ask you a final question. Curious on, so how many people were like initially setting up the vision? Like you, 2, 3, 4 people? Like how were people in like the initial founding team? How many people were in that team?
So the idea is that together with my brother, we were in the space for a long time. But at some point, after we invested in many projects in the space and saw that no one was delivering the solution that was really needed, we decided to have a discussion with the smartest people that we had as friends and gather them to have an initial conversation. So at that initial conversation, we were something like 9 or 10 people, all of them with very deep technical backgrounds and so forth. And there were a few other discussions from that point, but then in about 1 month from that initial discussion, it was clear to us that we basically had a breakthrough. It's actually funny because if you would see photos, we were basically in 2x2 room with just tables, a lot of maybe Coke and chips and stuff like that, and some blackboards to write math and equation to solve this 2 important problems that we were trying to solve. And then each day we would meet. It would be super fun. When you look at it right now, it's always very, very surprising, but it was intense back then, and it only became even more intense and interesting with the time.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I just want to acknowledge you, and before I ask my final question, I want to acknowledge you and the entire team. I I feel a great amount of heart in you, and I'm assuming that's in the entire team, because you are a representation of the team by nature. And that's just beautiful to see, especially now as we're transitioning from like a Maslow hierarchy of needs perspective. We're transitioning from like the me versus you, competition, I need to fight you, like all about money and status. We're transitioning from that more to like a what else is there type thing. And I'm so grateful that you're doing what you're doing. And my sincere hope and intention is that it will inspire people, and you guys have great success and impact the world, and inspire people to look at the other big and important problems that will make the life the life of everybody on earth, and hopefully beyond, so much better. And that would be so cool. Like at the end, like if you're thinking about a regret minimization strategy, like at the end of your life, that would be like, that was kick ass. So congrats for that. And I guess my only, and maybe you want to mention anything on that, but my only thing would be if there's any way for people to contribute or to take action or to learn more, or to take any sort of action step. Obviously we're going to have your Twitter, which is quite engaging, I would say, and Elrond's website and all this other stuff, and encourage people to read the white paper, or at least the abstract of it. So we have all of that. So just any way for people to contribute to what you're doing. Yeah.
So thank you very much. I would say that at this point, the way you would or should look at what's happening in the financial space is pretty much as perhaps the biggest opportunity in terms of both impact and upside since the invention of the internet. So this will probably be a kind of multi-trillion-dollar opportunity that people, depending on the backgrounds, will want to take a very close look at. If they're technical, we very much appreciate feedback. Feel free to join the Telegram communities. We have developers communities, validator communities, and so forth. There are a lot of creative ideas that wait to be built, and we're saying that the next Amazon and Google is perhaps one smart contract away. We encourage people to take the responsibility there, start playing with the technology. Then there are people with business backgrounds that, again, we encourage. There are a lot of business ideas to be implemented on top of blockchains. And with Elrond, you can, of course, build some things that were not possible before. And there are also the investor backgrounds and just people in the community, which we always encourage to be very thoughtful, very calculated in terms of decisions, because there's a large opportunity here, but you always want to have some clear ideas of what you want to do. We try to discourage as much as possible people trading because most of them just lose a lot of money. Yeah, other than that, yeah, feel free to jump in, offer feedback at any point, either in the website or in the Telegram groups. Yeah, I would add that we're just starting out. We've barely scratched the surface of what this space will become, Elrond will become, and happy to have a lot of feedback and engagement and contribution from the community.
Awesome. Thank you, Beniamin, for your time. Sending you my best intentions, and thank you all of you that have been listening. And we're gonna have links for everything that Beniamin talked about. You can follow up and look what he and the team are doing. So thank you so much, Beniamin. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Really great to have this discussion.